The sun was lazily rising over the hills surrounding the small rural village of Green Valley. It was springtime, and Matthew was observing the landscape from the top of the porch of the main house, the same porch where his grandfather, Jeremy Mendonça, used to contemplate the family lands. At 32, Matthew was now responsible for the small agricultural empire that his grandfather had built with so much effort. Horizon Farm, as it was known, sprawled across hectares of coffee plantations and cattle-raising areas. The workers had already begun their activities while Matthew slowly sipped his coffee, reflecting on how much his life had changed in recent months since his grandfather passed away. "Mr. Matthew, the documents you requested are on the desk in the office," informed Mrs. Celeste, the housekeeper who had worked for the family since Matthew was a child. "Thank you, Celeste. I'll take a look later." Matthew had strong but gentle features, inherited from his grandfather. His brown eyes reflected a calm intelligence, and his dark hair was beginning to show some silver strands at the temples, a result not of age, but of concerns about the family business. Trained in agronomy, he had returned to the farm 5 years earlier, after working in a large company in the capital. His grandfather was aging and needed help to manage everything. Now, with Jeremy's passing, all the responsibility rested on his shoulders. "Oh, I almost forgot," continued Mrs. Celeste. "Mr. Alberto called. He said he would come to discuss the details of the next harvest's export." Matthew nodded. Alberto was the main buyer of the coffee produced by Horizon Farm. A meeting with him meant good news for business. What Matthew didn't know was that the day would bring much more than business decisions to his life. A piece of his past was about to resurface, and with it, forgotten promises would come back to the surface. At the other end of the village, in a simple yet comfortable rental house, Louisa was getting the children ready for their first day at the new local school. At 30 years old, she carried a mix of determination and fatigue in her green eyes. Her naturally wavy brown hair was tied up in an improvised bun as she dealt with Peter, aged 8, Anna, aged 6, and little Miguel, just 4. "Mummy, I don't want to go to the new school," grumbled Anna, clutching her teddy bear tightly against her chest. "I don't know anyone there." Louisa knelt in front of her daughter, adjusting the floral dress the girl was wearing. "Remember what we talked about, dear? We're going to make new friends here. This is our new home now." It had been 2 years since Fernando, her husband, had passed away in a work accident, leaving Louisa alone with 3 small children. The loss had been devastating, not only emotionally but also financially. After months struggling to keep the family in the capital, she decided to return to Villa Verde, the place where she had spent some of the happiest summers of her childhood, when visiting her Aunt Amelia. The aunt had passed away years before, but the memories of that place remained alive. The smell of the garden flowers, the afternoons playing near the stream, and especially the boy with kind eyes who had been her best friend during those vacation months. She wondered if he still lived there, or if, like so many others, he had left to seek opportunities in the big cities. "Peter, help your brother with his shoes, please," Louisa requested as she prepared the backpacks with snacks. Peter, the oldest and the most like their father, had prematurely developed a sense of responsibility. He took care of the younger siblings with a dedication that at times tugged at Louisa's heart. "You're ready, Miguel," Peter said after tying his brother's shoelaces. Now you won't trip along the way." Louisa had secured a job as a teacher at the local school, which would allow her to be close to her children while providing for the family. It was a fresh start she hoped would bring stability for all. After dropping the children off at school, Louisa decided to walk through the village before starting her first day of work the following week. The street still retained the rural charm she remembered, although some changes were evident. New shops, a small renovated square, more cars. Her steps led her, almost unconsciously, to the community garden where she had spent so many hours in her childhood. To her surprise, the place was still well maintained, with its wooden benches, flower beds, and the ancient ipe tree now displaying its impressive height. "It can't be," she murmured, touching the trunk of the tree where, more than 20 years ago, she and her childhood friend had carved their initials. L+M. The letters were still there, although time had made them almost imperceptible. It was then that a voice interrupted her thoughts. "The garden is still beautiful, isn't it?" Louisa turned around to find a middle-aged man who could be the gardener. "Yes, it is lovely. I'm surprised it's still so well maintained after all these years." "The Mendonça family has always insisted on keeping this place. Old Jeremy used to say that gardens are the heart of a community," explained the man with a nostalgic smile. The name Mendonça sparked a memory in Louisa. Her childhood friend, the boy she used to play with, was a Mendonça. Matthew Mendonça. Could it be possible that he was still around? "Do you happen to know Matthew Mendonça?" she asked, trying to sound casual. The man smiled broadly. "Of course I know him. He is the owner of Horizon Farm now, ever since Mr. Jeremy passed away. A good lad. He's following in his grandfather's footsteps." Louisa's heart raced. So many memories resurfaced. The races through the garden, the invented stories under that same tree, the childish promises. "Thank you," she said to the gardener, who continued his work. Louisa sat on one of the benches, absorbing the information. Matthew still lived there. The boy who once promised, with the seriousness only a 10-year-old could muster, that he would take care of her forever. At Horizon Farm, the meeting with Alberto had ended with good news. The export contract would be renewed with even better conditions, ensuring the financial stability of the farm for the coming years. "Your grandfather would be proud, Matthew," commented Alberto, putting the documents in his briefcase. "You're carrying on his legacy brilliantly." Matthew thanked him with a nod, but his features remained serious. There was something that had been bothering him for weeks, something his grandfather had mentioned in his last days. "Find someone worthy of your heart, my son," were Jeremy's words. "Someone who understands the value of the land and its roots. Horizon Farm needs continuity. It needs a family." The grandfather's expectations weighed on him. Not that Matthew didn't want to start a family, but at 32 years old he had devoted so much to business that his personal life ended up taking a back seat. The relationships he had never evolved into something serious. "What is bothering you?" asked Alberto, noticing Matthew's thoughtful expression. "My grandfather's last words," he replied. "He really wanted to see me married, continuing the family lineage." Alberto laughed, giving Matthew a friendly pat on the shoulder. "Well, in that case, I have a charming niece who just graduated in economics. Maybe we could arrange a dinner." Matthew forced a smile. It wasn't the first suggestion of this kind he had received. Since his grandfather's passing, It seemed everyone in the village was determined to find a suitable wife for the young manager of Horizon Farm. After Alberto's departure, Matthew decided to walk around the property to clear his mind. The evening painted the sky with orange hues, creating a spectacle over the coffee plantations. It was his grandfather's favourite moment, who used to say that the day bids farewell with its best colours to remind us that it's always worth waiting for tomorrow. His steps led him to the edge of the farm, where a stream meandered between ancient trees. It was a special place where he used to play as a child. It was there that he met a girl from the city one summer, decades ago. A girl with green eyes and a quick laugh, with whom he shared imaginary adventures and childhood secrets. For a moment, Matthew wondered what had happened to her. Louisa was her name. For years, she would visit her aunt during the holidays, until one day she simply stopped coming. He learned years later that her aunt had moved away, but he never heard from his childhood friend again. The week went by normally for Louisa, busy organising the house and preparing her material to start teaching. The children seemed to be adapting well to the new school, especially Peter, who was already talking about a classmate he had befriended. On Sunday, she decided to take the children to the village's traditional market, an open-air fair where local producers sold their products. It was an opportunity to get to know the community better and also to buy fresh food for the week. The market was crowded, with colourful stalls displaying fruits, vegetables, handicrafts, and typical regional products. The children were enchanted by the variety of colours and aromas. "Look, Mummy, can these be treats for dessert?" asked Anna, pointing to a stall of homemade sweets. "Let's buy some fruits first, then we'll think about dessert," replied Louisa, holding Miguel's hand as he tried to grab everything he saw in front of him. It was when she was choosing some apples that a familiar voice caught her attention. It wasn't exactly the same voice she remembered. It was deeper, more mature, but there was something about it that made her turn around immediately. And there he was. Matthew was talking with one of the farmers, animatedly discussing farming methods. Even from a distance, she recognized the boy's features in his adult face. He had grown, of course, becoming a tall man with an elegant demeanour, but the gentle smile and the way he gestured while speaking remained the same. Louisa's heart raced. Should she approach him? What if he didn't recognize her? 20 years had passed after all. As she hesitated, her son Miguel slipped out of her hand and ran through the people, quickly disappearing into the crowd. "Miguel!" she shouted, alarmed. Peter, the eldest son, immediately held Anna's hand. "Stay with Anna, Mum. I'm going after him," said the boy, taking responsibility as he always did. "No, Peter. Stay together. I'll go get him," instructed Louisa, trying to stay calm while her eyes searched desperately for her youngest son. Then she saw Miguel had stopped in front of Matthew, looking up with childlike curiosity while tugging at the man's shirt sleeve to get his attention. Matthew crouched down to the child's level and said something that made the boy smile. Louisa hurried in their direction with Peter and Anna close behind. "Miguel, you can't run off like that," she said, relieved to find her son. When Matthew looked up at the worried mother, recognition was immediate. Those green eyes had accompanied him in so many childhood memories. "Louisa?" he asked, standing up slowly, as if afraid she might vanish if he made any sudden moves. "Hello, Matthew," she replied with a shy smile. "It seems my son found you before I could introduce myself." The reunion at the market was just the beginning. In the following days, childhood memories served as a bridge to a new adult friendship. Matthew invited Louisa and the children to visit Horizon Farm, showing them the coffee plantations, the stables with gentle horses that enchanted Peter, Anna and Miguel, and the old garden of the main house that his grandmother had lovingly tended. For the children, the farm was a paradise for discoveries. For Louisa, it represented a reconnection with part of her history, and for Matthew, their presence brought a new energy to the land. "Your grandfather seemed to be a wise man," Louisa commented as they walked through the orchard, watching the children run ahead, chasing butterflies. "He was," Matthew confirmed. "He had a special way of seeing the world. He used to say that those who don't see with the heart end up blind in soul." Louisa smiled, recognizing the wisdom in the words. "He taught me practically everything I know," Matthew continued, "about the land, about respect, about responsibility. But I think his most important lesson was about valuing what truly matters in life." As the days turned into weeks, Matthew found himself increasingly involved with Louisa and her children. He helped Peter with his homework, told stories to Anna, and taught Miguel how to ride a gentle pony. Without realizing it, he was fulfilling his childhood promise to take care of Louisa, albeit in a way his younger self could never have imagined. However, not everything was rosy. Comments began circulating around the village. People questioned why the heir to Horizon Farm was wasting his time with a widow and her 3 children when he could be courting girls from better families. Ms. Celeste, always loyal, warned Matthew about the rumours. "People are talking, Mr. Matthew. They say your grandfather wanted to see you married to someone befitting the family, not a widowed teacher." Matthew felt his blood boil. "My grandfather wanted to see me happy, Celeste, and he wanted me to find someone worthy of my heart, someone who understood the value of family and roots." The rumours eventually reached Louisa's ears, making her question whether her presence in Matthew's life was causing more problems than joy. One night after a dinner at the farm, when the children were distracted by the chessboard, she confronted the situation. "Perhaps we shouldn't see each other for a while, Matthew. People are talking and I don't want to be an obstacle for you." Matthew looked at her seriously, taking her hands in his. "Louisa, do you remember the promise I made when we were children? That I would take care of you forever?" She nodded, her eyes glistening. "It was a childhood promise, Matthew. We can't—" "It was a sincere promise," he interrupted, "perhaps childish in form but true in essence. When you reappeared in my life with your children, something inside me felt complete. As if a part I didn't even know was missing found its place." It was at that moment that Matthew fully understood his grandfather's words. "Those who do not see with the heart end up blind in soul." Old Jeremy was not talking about status or social conveniences. He was talking about finding someone who brings purpose and meaning to life. "My grandfather always said that Horizon Farm needed continuity, a family," Matthew shared. "When he talked about finding someone worthy, he wasn't referring to titles or possessions. He was talking about character, about true love." He stood in front of her, still holding her hands. "You are that person, Louisa. You and your children are already the family this farm needed. The family I needed." Tears streamed down Louisa's face as Matthew continued. "I am not asking to replace the memory of your late husband in your lives. I am asking us to build something new together, something based on our shared past and the possibilities of the future." That night, under the same starry sky that had witnessed their childhood games decades before, Matthew proposed to Louisa, and she, with her heart open to a new chapter, said yes. Months later, the community garden, the same one where they had carved their initials into the tree so many years before, was chosen as the setting for the ceremony. Peter, proud, walked his mother down the makeshift aisle between the flowers. Anna scattered petals along the path, and Miguel carried the rings with the solemnity that a 4-year-old child can demonstrate. The malicious comments of the village had been replaced by admiration upon seeing the genuine love that united that newly formed family. And somewhere, Matthew was sure, his grandfather Jeremy was smiling, pleased to see that his grandson had learned the most important of his lessons, to see with the heart. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.